Hi, this is Mark Jackson, and I'm interviewing John Blanchard. John is a candidate in the upcoming elections for City Commission in the City of Salina. John, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, it's great to be here, Mark. And let me just offer a congratulations to you. I don't know the specific title that you were honored with, but what exactly was that?
Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts.
Fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts.
Shared with Benjamin Franklin and George Washington Carver.
Right. Well, which is the Carver Museum up north and
Correct.
Up north of here in Minneapolis.
Wow.
But congratulations.
Thank you.
What a great honor.
Thank you, John.
So,
John, tell me about yourself. Where do you come from?
well, I too am a member of the Royal Order of the. No, seriously. Well, I grew up all over the world. I was an Air Force brat. I was born in Salina, incidentally, out at Schilling Air Force Base.
Oh.
So out where Schwann's Global is, I was born out there in 1963. I'm 56 years old. I moved around with my family though after that, and moved back to Salina in the mid-70s and went to high school. Graduated from Salina South High School, went on and graduated with a degree in architecture from Kansas State University, and have worked in New York City, in Park City and Salt Lake City, Utah as a land planner and landscape architect, and moved back to Salina in about 2011-ish, full-time, and served on the City Commission from 2013, April, to January of 2018, and 1 year as mayor from April 2015 to April 2016.
So you've had some previous experience of serving on the city here?
I have on the governing body here, but probably my most valuable experience was as a landscape architect and land planner. I presented in front of many city planning commissions and county planning commissions and city commissions and governing bodies. My project experience ranges in about 14 different states. So dealt with a lot of different forms of government, dealt with a lot of different communities and the way they do things, and felt like when I was back here, I started working with the North Salina Community Development Group, and I felt like I could contribute some skills that I had from the planning perspective with that group, and then that kind of morphed into broader public service with running for City Commission and being elected in 2013.
So it sounds as though, John, you've got a passion for working within this community and for this community.
Well, yes, I think working with committed groups of people that are passionate about the things that not only interest them, but passionate about helping other people. Two boards that I've served on recently have been the North Salina Community Development Board, and also the board on the Salina NAACP. And so I think that to find those groups that you can serve on that serve a higher purpose are the things that I have particularly found enjoyment in.
So what do you currently do in Salina, John?
Well, I am a land planner and landscape architect. I do a lot of custom cabinet and furniture design, and do some sort of a hobby is home renovation.
Oh, okay.
So I recently have bought a piece of property in town that I'm in the core, and right off of downtown, that I'm looking to renovate and have available when I'm in town.
Excellent. Okay. So why have you filed as a candidate for a seat on the City Commission?
Well, when I ran back in 2013, I said I wanted to do, the main things I wanted to do were help to create policies, because that really is the job of a city commissioner, is to work to create policies, and mine were to promote long-term sustainable economic and community development. I sat by and being someone that had been away for about 20 plus years, I come back to Salina and notice that there is 40% of the community in 2010 was designated area of change, which is a really polite and nice way of saying blight. And so I began working with the North Salina group. I felt there were experiences that I had from community development as a planner and designer that I could bring and maybe help craft policies that would get us into a situation where we weren't growing out so much faster than we were growing in population. Little known fact is that since 1965, the city of Salina has grown by population of just under 10%. Yet the city has grown almost 3 times in area. So what that really means is that we have so much more responsibility per each taxpayer. And it's a model that isn't sustainable, and I ran to help promote policies that would help us to get away from the if we build it, they will come way of development to build it as they come.
Okay.
And so that's probably my main strength is in planning and development.
So what were your main achievements with regard to the North Salina area when you were
Well, one of the
active in
things one of the things that we did, and it's not just related to land planning, but we initiated and completed a lot of neighborhood beautification projects. Probably the most notable is the Five Corners landscaping area that's at Pacific, 9th Street, and Broadway. And that was all privately, private money, no public money in that. And we turned a vacant, weed-infested lot into an entry point into the community that the neighborhood and I think citizens throughout Salina could be proud of, that it's one of our gateways and that we really work to make it look nice. Now that's actually grown into a porches project and beautification of 9th Street. That's kind of all grown from there, as well as other beautification, public art type projects, that all of which have been privately funded. Another important thing is that when the North Salina group got started, it was basically in response to 2 things. One was Hawthorne School redevelopment, but another big thing was that we didn't have a grocery store in North Salina or really a whole lot of commerce. So at the time, right before I ran for office, we did a pledge drive for support because in 2012, the Dillons on Iron had closed. And with the help of Greg Stevens, myself and others at Astra and Mocha's at the time, and other businesses that stepped up, Great Plains was one, we gathered over 3,000 signatures of support to reopen a store in the old Dillons on Iron. And that store now, as we all know, Save-A-Lot grocery store is there. And so that was a major success.
Yeah.
You were asking about North Salina.
Yeah, specifically North Salina.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, Salina recently has had some budget challenges. How are you going to address this issue? What would you cut and what would you keep?
Okay. Now, what I tried to do while I was in office was a number of things. One is that we need to get better paying jobs in town, and we need to do a better job of attracting industry. So one of the first things that we did then was that we moved our model away from contracting with the Chamber of Commerce to do economic development, to have a standalone economic development organization. That's proven to be something that has at least had some recent successes, and it's something that those successes we can build upon. So one of the things was, let's be more effective when we do allot tax dollars, that we're getting something in return for them. So that's from the economic development standpoint. There was a big brouhaha about special assessment policies, and basically, in a nutshell, the special assessments policy was to address that when we do decide to finance as a city with taxpayer dollars an expansion of the city, that we do a fiscal impact analysis to make sure that future budgets and future tax increases can be mitigated by what should be certain growth. And we've never done that before. We still haven't done that. So one of the things that I would do would say we need to put more teeth back in. We passed a policy, and then this new group went in and redid the policy immediately. And we need to go back to the policy that says, let's make sure that this is going to deliver what it says it's going to deliver, and we'll do that. And then the third thing, and it goes back to economic development. When I was in office before, we had tasked the city manager with coming up with an economic development incentives policy. That never has happened. We've gone and we've done star bonds, we've done TIFs, we've done field houses, we've subsidized all these things, and yet we don't have a policy in place to do that. Also, a parks master plan is something that I pushed for and that we have now, and it went out and asked the public, what are your priorities? What do you want to see in your park system? Not just in physical parks, but in your recreation programs. And so we have that document, and it prioritizes and lays out what the citizens want to have. And so I think what you cut and what you say you're going to cut, I think is individual projects are less important than setting up policies that say we're not going to have out of control taxes based on decisions that weren't well thought out originally. So what I would do is I would continue to try to get policies passed that work towards long-term economic sustainability, long-term community sustainability. And when I ran the first time, I said we need to take care of what we have instead of building more new shiny things, okay? And those are the things we need to get back into fiscal responsibility where we set priorities and we clearly identify what are we gotta haves, the needs, versus boy, it sure would be nice if we had some of these, which are the wants.
So you mentioned that you were responsible for a change in the way that we develop the economy within the city by taking it away from the Chamber of Commerce and placing that within the city. Did that decision lead to the announcement of Vision Aviation to relocate here and to potentially develop the 450 new jobs?
Right. Well, the 50 new jobs initially.
But with potentially up to 400.
And it has a potential for 450 new jobs. The answer to that is clearly yes.
Yeah.
The EDO is tasked with, and their executive director is a gentleman named Mitch Robinson, okay? Their task is business attraction.
Yes.
Okay? And so what gets lost in that shuffle is that we also attracted a group called LifeSave, which is a helicopter rescue ambulance type service that has regional locations around Kansas and I think Missouri and Oklahoma and Hawaii or somewhere. But that's 16 jobs. And that fits right in with our industry clusters of healthcare and aviation. So, that, in my opinion, if you have to say which one of those two projects was the home run, I think the LifeSave was a home run.
Yeah.
I think that One Aviation right now is a double because the two things it does that I really like is that we attracted 50 new good paying jobs, but I think the side benefit is that it requires skilled labor, and I think it really is going to force other businesses in the community to look at their employees and hopefully bump up wages to help to retain those good quality, skilled employees.
Okay. So your basic way of operating would be to attract high-paying jobs rather than to cut services in order to pay for them.
Listen, we're going to have to cut services, and we already have.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about raising taxes or cutting services. Incidentally, we have a couple of commissioners that are running for re-election that actually in a meeting a few weeks ago mentioned that they feel like maybe Salina has been undertaxed in the property tax lately. Well, I don't think Salina taxpayers have been undertaxed at all. I think that we have overspent. We have failed to prioritize what our spending needs truly are.
Okay.
And so it's not always raise taxes or cut spending or whatever. We have a level of service that people have come to expect. And if we're going to raise their taxes, there ought to be a corresponding elevation of the level of service. People want value. People will be willing to spend more to have their streets repaired if they see that the value, that's what it's actually going to be spent on, and that value exists. And so there's a trust that happens between taxpayers and the voters and the governing body. And I think that trust lately has been strained. And so, I was there as part of the group that said, you vote for the sales tax increase, we'll fix your neighborhood streets. They're cutting $400,000 out of that budget this year. I think it's a broken promise, and I think we need to keep those obligations.
So it sounds as though your tax model is one of a combination of sales tax and value-added tax.
Well, not necessarily a value-added tax.
Yeah.
It's sales tax.
Yeah.
It's property tax.
Yeah.
And I call it a tax. They call it fees.
Right.
But the fees have gone up considerably, and they tag everything to the water. Water, sewer, trash, and now recycling center all go on one bill. And that number keeps going up. So, to go back, how do you cut some spending that's unnecessary? We're looking at building a $40 million water treatment facility at Waterwell Road in Ohio, okay? Based on a 0.5% annual growth rate. The state of Kansas has said that in the next 40 years, we can expect a growth rate of 0.4% for the entire 40 years. And so we've actually declined 0.8% in the last few years in population. What that means is that we have fewer people that are paying more, that will be forced to pay more for a water treatment facility that we really don't have the demand for. And so things like that, if you're able to cut those off now and just don't build it, then you don't have to worry about the maintenance and the upkeep and everything else for the next 40 years.
So what's your plan to address the income gap in Salina, John?
Well, the thing about we don't really have a lot of direct input on what wages are. But I'll go back to what our why an economic development incentives policy is something that I want to see. I want to see that if you come in and you say, hey, City of Salina, we'd like incentives for this, this, and this is the dollar amount. We need to have a policy that is in place that says you only qualify for that if you are going to pay a certain wage with certain benefits and other criteria that goes along with it. We have best practices, models from communities like Lawrence, Manhattan. I think Topeka might have some. Just about everybody has an economic development incentives policy that doesn't say you have to pay a certain rate, because you can't do that. I mean, you can't tell the private sector they have to pay a certain rate. But you can say, if you'd like to receive subsidies or dollars from the city, these are some of the targets we'd like to see you commit to.
Okay.
And so that's how I think you address income and wages in the community.
Yeah. Housing is one of the main issues in the community today. How should we address the housing issues that we have in Salina?
Part of we have two legs of that housing issue. One is that we want to have affordable, good quality housing, okay? And we want it to be affordable, okay? We also want people, when they make an investment in their properties, to be able to realize some appreciation in those properties. Special assessment financing pretty much controls the market in a way that doesn't allow for direct competition and forces prices up, because on the very front end of it, it forces developers to spend way too much on their properties. And so there are a number of things that we can do finance-wise, but to put Salina in the most competitive market available, which means let the free market work on housing, and what it'll do, it'll bring prices down. It'll bring prices down. Competition will bring the prices down. And the other thing is that we got to figure out how to get a grip on areas of town going into blight. We have a downtown area that we've pumped a lot of money in, but nobody lives downtown because the property values are so bad. People are afraid to make investments because they said, geez, my neighbors, their properties are all distressed, and I'm not going to get my money out of my property. So we need to really focus on how do we strengthen our core neighborhoods and grow out from there, because if we don't have people living downtown, this downtown project hasn't got a chance.
Okay. The Salina population has been declining over the past few years. Why do you think this is occurring, John, and do we need to reverse this trend?
Well, I'll answer the last question first,
Okay.
and then it'd be nice if that trend were reversed, but frankly, we don't have a whole lot of power to sway that. Roughly 2/3 of the rural counties in the United States are in decline. Okay, it's a demographic reality. Okay, we're better to if we plan on growing at 0.5% annual growth, then we're going to make decisions that ruin us. But if we make decisions based on little to no growth, we are stronger, we're more resilient, because we haven't bitten off more than we're able to chew. Okay? So the reason for rural decline, the great thing about Google is you can Google it. Google rural flight. Google rural decline. It's a phenomenon that isn't new. It's been going on for over 20 years. And it's just starting to catch up to some areas that are not. I read a study that says if you're under 500,000 or over 3 million people, you're not in the sweet spot. The sweet spot is between 500,000 and 3 million communities. Those are the ones that are growing.
Yeah.
The other ones on the other ends of that scale are not doing well.
Yeah.
So for a long time, the prognosis has been you're not going to grow. Wichita Center for Business and Economic Development Research is the study I talked about that said we're going to grow 0.4% for the next 40 years. And I think we need to look at that. We also need to look at the intermediate census, the American Community Survey, and not just count on the decennial census every 10 years to recalibrate. We need to be more on top of what these declines are, make our decisions based more on real data rather than hoping things will get better. And we just need to be more resilient.
Yeah. How do you feel about the new downtown developments?
Well, I'm a big downtown redevelopment person. Downtown projects need to be well planned. They need to be incremental. They need to build off of small successes. And the one big bang projects rarely work out. Well, we decided to do one big bang project. I'm hopeful for downtown. What I do like is that we've got some things fixed up that probably needed to be fixed up. We spent way too much money. We didn't need to spend $1.5 million on overhead crosswalk structures, okay? We needed to be more prudent with those dollars. We needed to fix what needed to be fixed. upgrade some projects and so on. But the problem with star bonds are a really bad program for a number of reasons. The Kansas City Star has recently come out with a huge editorial in yesterday's paper that basically said it's time to end star bonds. They're overpromise, underdelivered. They're not transparent, and they basically take money away from schools and other state essential programs. We got lured into the somebody else is going to pay for this thing, and the bottom line is there is no easy money, and other people aren't going to pay for it. So I hope that the businesses do well and attract people downtown. We'll have to wait and see on that because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And now we have to report exactly how much money on those. So we'll get to see, but you know, the field house was supposed to generate a lot of sales tax. And if you look at the last year and a half of sales tax, it's been down. And so I think we need people in office that are willing to take a critical look, do their homework, do the research, and not just go with some sort of gut feeling or pressure from people in the community that say, oh, come on, you know, just do this, it'll be great, you know, we got to do this. I want to do solid, necessary projects that we need and not do Hail Mary projects.
Okay. Every city is pursuing economic development, yet many medium-sized communities are facing multiple challenges related to it. Mm-hmm. What's your vision and how should Salina do it?
I think first of all, I'll go back to, I think we need an economic development incentives policy, right, so that we make sure that when we do spend economic development dollars, and it kind of goes back to the downtown, what kind of jobs is that creating? Restaurant jobs and hotel jobs. You know, those aren't good quality jobs, and if you're going to spend your economic development dollars, you need to get more in return for that. So development incentives policy will help to address some of those concerns. The other thing is that what we see is a race to the bottom. And we're starting to see the results of that. We're starting to see communities that have traded long-term prosperity for short-term gain. And we need to avoid that. When I ran the first time, I said, you know, we need to avoid the short-term gains at the cost of long-term prosperity and resiliency, I might add. So we need to not focus so much on what everybody else is doing, and if we're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. I mean, because if everybody else is jumping off the bridge, you may not want to be the guy that's jumping off the bridge, you know. So I think we need to do the things that are right for this community, right for the people in this community, because if we don't right size whatever incentives we offer, then we can do great harm. The Town Project, we've given away 20 years of growth for that project. So if it doesn't pan out, then we're dealing with it for 20 years.
So what kind of incentives are you talking about, Johnny? Are you talking about working with the existing companies here and making it more attractive for them to invest in more research and development or product development, or are you interested in bringing in new companies into the city?
Well, I would say both, and I would say that my target would be what stage companies. Okay, what stage is that company in? So, you know, a lot of places have gone to more of an economic gardening model. Those primarily are looking like, what do we have here, and how do we work with these companies to grow them? What I like about that One Vision Aviation project that we talked about before is that they're a stage 2 company. Okay, they're primed and ready for growth. And by looking for I would look for stage 2 companies, okay? Whether they're here or whether they have a connection somehow with the community that is particularly tied into our strengths and our industry cluster strengths. And those would be the stuff that goes on at K-State Polytechnic, the stuff that's going on at the hospital, and the stuff that's tied to federal aviation type work and military work. I think those are already really strong areas. And I would be looking for stage 2 companies that are like on the brink of growth in those markets that have potential and also that aren't too big already, because they're looking for a more unique set of incentives. And those would be the ones that I would hope that we focus on, because those also bring with it the better paying jobs.
So you'd look at companies in other states, say in high-cost states like California or Massachusetts, and bring those type of companies here?
I think they'd be looking at us more than we need to look for them. But I would, as I said, I'd look for those companies in that stage. This one's coming from Iowa.
Yeah.
You know, we need to market, and we have this Salina Community Economic Development Organization that is in charge of business attraction. And, you know, we had a great deal of help from the state on putting together this One Vision Aviation project. So I would really, I wouldn't go out looking for places to go hunting. I think we have the ability now with technology to seek out those companies that may be in that sort of area that's ready for growth and just needs a few things that we might be able to offer them that are unique.
John, we're situated in the middle of the country. We have 2 interstates that intersect here. We have a wide variety of different industries here, world-class industries. Why do you think we haven't seen this level of economic growth that we should expect to see in a city like Salina?
Well, we've had studies, economic development studies, that have been done over the years. And I can tell you one of the things that pops up frequently is the fact, 2 things. One is that our existing industry, existing businesses, aren't really interested in having growth from external sources. I mean, those are direct comments from that. And for years, we've advertised as a great place because we offer low wages. And I think it sends a bad message to potential workforce and skilled labor to say, well, geez, I want to go to a place where I can make a good living. That doesn't sound like that place. So I think we needed to get rid of that. We need a mentality that's more like, people always ask about McPherson. Well, McPherson has what's called the McPherson Industrial Development Incorporated.
Yeah.
And they are a for-profit organization. They started in 1959. And they go out and they actively grow the pie. We seem to have wanted to protect the pie. And I think it's just going to take a paradigm shift. And we're going to have to say, we need outside companies that want to come here and grow along with us in order to be successful. We can't continue to block people wanting to come into our market. So we need to be more inclusive. And I really do think that if we did that, there's fear around, well, we'll have to raise wages, we'll lose employees. I think we'll have more people coming here that that are attracted to skilled positions with better wages.
And John, do you see the educational base as being an attraction here in Salina?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you what, I think, I'm biased. I'm a K-State graduate, but I think K-State Polytechnic has great offerings, and boy, I tell you what, just world class. The the rival medical school downtown, I believe it's the smallest medical school in the United States, but what they're able to provide for rural Kansas helps us, because if we're training doctors to stay in Kansas, that really helps our regional partners strengthen their communities, which helps us. I mean, we do a lot of retail. You know, we're their retail hub, and so that school is good for them. I love Kansas Wesleyan. It's my second favorite purple. I think Matt Thompson has done a great job, and if folks haven't been out to watch Kansas Wesleyan athletics, Mike Herman has done an amazing job with their athletics department. Yeah. They're exciting to watch. And you know, our secondary schools, our post-secondary education, K-12s, K through 12, we have a great product. I think we can always become stronger, but I think that we have a really good offering for young families with children in school. We just need to figure out a way to keep them here.
Yeah. You know, KU, as you mentioned, have got the campus in the downtown area. And now they have their signs emblazoned on the side of the wall. They have, you know, they've seems.
Yeah, I think that's a violation of a sign ordinance.
But what it does is that it highlights that there is a community down there that's not just focused on helping people when they're sick, but also helping people to get educated in order to prevent themselves from being sick and to support the community. Do you think that there is a possibility of having some form of economic development based on that industry that seems to be growing around the downtown area?
Well, I think they are. I mean, I think that in and of itself is a component of our healthcare cluster.
Right.
Okay. A tie-in with that is that now we had a big donation to Kansas Wesleyan School of Nursing, so that kind of ties into that industry cluster as well. I think, you know, healthcare is a big deal, and we're fortunate to have, you know, Salina Regional here. It's a great draw, but it's also a good anchor for an industry cluster that I think we can do more to grow, use it as something that we really need to focus on growing.
Good, John. John, thanks very much for attending this show. It's been a real pleasure to hear about your policies and what you intend to do. I'd now like to give you the opportunity to be able to look into the camera, speak to our viewers directly, the electorate, and to summarize what you've said and to try and convince them why they should vote for you in the upcoming elections.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark, and Salina Media Connection for the opportunity to talk directly to the folks in Salina, the voters, and, as you say, make a case for why I would be a good choice for them to return to the Salina City Commission. Let me just, you know, a lot of the things that I've talked about are being more resilient, being more frugal, and more fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. And that is to say, let's fix what we have before we build new, and let's focus on the things that we need versus the things that we want. Let's keep the luxury items kind of waiting until we get taken care of the things we need to do. One of the big things that I will promise to do, again, if fortunate enough to be returned to the City Commission, and that is, I think that we need to have more transparency and more opportunity for the citizens to participate. We currently make it very difficult for people to attend City Commission meetings and study session meetings. I am proposing that we move our meetings to twice a month and hold our meetings at 6 o'clock in the evening so that not only more people can participate from a citizen perspective, but that we have a broader pool of candidates that are able to serve. We need to focus on getting more working class people involved in what we do in city government. So I hope that you'll take a careful look at the policies that I'm interested in. I hope that you can agree with some of them. And I ask for your vote in November. And I think, again, Mark and the crew here at Salina Media Connection.
Thanks very much, John.
Thank you.
Real pleasure.